Good morning and afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Leveraging People Data in SharePoint Intranets. This webinar is hosted by Bonzai, Intranet, and Hyperfish. Just before we get started, could everyone let me know in the question pane to your right if you can hear me correctly? Great. It looks like everyone can hear me. So just before we get started, audio will come through on the speakers in your computer. There's also an option to dial in if your internet's a little bit shoddy. When you access via your internet, sometimes the sound will cut out. So just log out and log back in if that happens. Questions can be asked throughout the webinar. We'll do our best to answer them as we go, but we do have dedicated time at the end for you. There will be poll questions. This is interactive, so we want to get an idea of where you're at to help us direct the content a little bit better. When the webinar is done, there will be a post survey when you exit the screen. So if you could take a few minutes to answer the questions, that would be really helpful. It gives us a good idea how we did and how we can improve in the future. And there will be a follow-up email that will go out after this with the webinar slides and the recording. So I will now hand it over to one of our presenters, Michael, and he will introduce himself.
So good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar. So my name is Michael Pisarik. I am one of the co-founders here at Dynamic Our Consulting and going to be one of your speakers today along with Jeremy. I do a couple of things here at Bonzai, but really my main role is around our Bonzai Intranet products. So I'm Director of Product here at Bonzai Intranet. I'm also a 6 times Microsoft SharePoint MVP, and I do a ton of work both around kind of the intranet and the digital workplace space. My real interest is really around making sure that we provide really great digital workplace solutions for our customers, and a lot of that is around making sure that we have the correct kind of people data for various people. So that's myself. Jeremy, I'll hand it over to you to introduce yourself also.
Great, so thanks Michael. So Jeremy Thake, I work at Hyperfish as the VP of Product Technology. I have been basically working on this now for a few months, but prior to that I was working at Microsoft as a Senior Product Manager both in Azure and Office 365. You may have seen me through my blog on jeremythake.com where I write about Office 365 and on Azure.
Nice one, thanks Jeremy. So a little bit about us. So excuse me. So we are Dynamic Our Consulting. We have an intranet product called Bonzai Intranet also. We're based here out of Vancouver, Canada. As you can probably tell, I don't typically sound Canadian. Jeremy definitely does not sound American. But we actually both spent some time in the same city in Perth as well. So we're a consulting company here. Really what we have really transitioned into is moving really away out of consulting and more into intranet. So we have an intranet product called Bonzai, which essentially helps kickstart intranet and digital workplace solutions on top of both the SharePoint on-prem and also Office 365 platform. We also do a bunch of other work around kind of digital workplaces, whether that's strategy, consulting, or a lot of work with forms and workflow as well through our other partners, which are Nintex. What we try to do, like I said, is we really help organizations create these digital workplaces on SharePoint and on Office 365. Bonzai has been around for a couple of years now, and really we've been kind enough or lucky enough to deploy Bonzai into lots of different organizations all around the world. So we've got a lot of users, around about 300,000 active users currently, really helping their organizations drive things like collaboration and engagement through our product and through the Microsoft stack. Our goal here at Bonzai is really 3 things. So to help organizations communicate, collaborate, and engage with SharePoint and Office 365. And one of the reasons that we partnered with Hyperfish is, when we look at that digital workplace and we look at intranets in general, we're finding that not only having the right information about content is important, but also having the right information about people is critically important. And there's a couple of reasons for that, and I'll talk about that throughout the rest of the presentation. But the first thing we're finding is the more that you know about an individual and the better that data is about them, the better that you can target content to them. So whether that's being able to target, let's say, news articles or events by a person's location, maybe that's the ability to find people very quickly and very easily. And not just through keystone data, like the department that they work for and maybe their phone number, but also other types of data that we're finding the organizations that we work with are really finding critical. So for instance, being able to find a person in a particular department that speaks a language is critically important. Being able to find people by skills or interests or expertise, or maybe being able to find people with a particular speciality within a product or a subject area is something that we've really seen resonate with a lot of our customers. So for us, and the reason that we're really proud to partner with Hyperfish is having the right information about people is almost as important as having the right information about content, because what you're going to be able to do is not only use that information to find people easier, but you're also going to be able to use that information to help present the right content to those users also. So in terms of this webinar, we've got 3 sections here that we're going to go through. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the business problem. So really the problem of incomplete people data. We know that people's Active Directories and the data that they store about individuals really aren't in the best shape, particularly from an enterprise perspective. But how does that relate into some of the actual issues that organizations are experiencing? The next thing that we're going to talk about is also about automation technology. So this is where Jeremy is going to talk about the Hyperfish product. How can their product help you automate the process of gathering data about individuals in a much more seamless and a much more easy and transparent way? And then the final thing we're going to talk about is that value of complete people data in your intranet or your digital workplace. So what can you do with that data? For instance, if I know the individuals, or I have this information in my Active Directory or stored somewhere, that I know people that speak a certain language, or I know where people are located, how can I actually use this data to make an organization more productive, whether that's from a productivity perspective, whether that's from an engagement perspective, or whether that's from a kind of content management and communication perspective also. Now, the other thing that Sean mentioned as well, there's going to be a couple of polls. We like polls during our webinars, but we also like questions. So if you have questions, we're going to stop kind of partway through this webinar just to answer any questions that people have. So please answer them. Please ask them. You don't have to wait until the end. We like making these things definitely as interactive as possible. And both myself and Jeremy come with a wealth of experience, both around SharePoint and Office 365 and other things. So feel free to ask anything, and we'll make sure that we'll try to answer them. So let's talk about the cost of incomplete people data. So this is the first thing that we want to discuss. But before we get into that, we have a bit of a poll. So our first poll question is, can you find information, or can you easily find the information that you need on your intranet? So I'm going to launch this poll in just a second. Now what you'll see on your audience view thing here, you should be able to see exactly a poll coming up. So if you just want to click on that and answer that, that would be great. And what we'll do is we'll wait about another 10 seconds. Now, strangely enough, and I know this is going to shock people, but very few people are saying yes always, our intranet search helps. We've got a few people saying that their intranet is really not reliable, but most people are saying sometimes. So it's a bit of a hit or miss here. So I'm just going to close this poll here now. There we go. So let me just share these results out with everyone also. So if we could see the results there, like I said, it's pretty, most people are saying things are okay. Sometimes I can find content. Very few people are saying they can find content all of the time. and quite a few people are actually saying that they can't find anything. So this is pretty common. I mean, especially when we work with organizations and talk with them, we really do find that that ability to find content really quickly and really easily on their intranet isn't necessarily a given. So if we look at some statistics around this, one of the things that we're finding is that findability of content now has almost changed. So it used to be that it was very difficult to find content because it was really, that content was sparse, but now really the opposite has happened. So this is research from our friends at Deloitte, and I'm sure everyone can really relate to how overwhelming things can get in the workplace. What we're finding with all these new technologies is really that information and data is being created really at an unprecedented rate. And it's really become a game of not so much, how much information you can digest, but really where those best pieces of information are. So Deloitte did a bunch of research into this, and they actually found that 72% of knowledge workers simply cannot find the information that they need in those company systems. And it wasn't so much that they couldn't find the information, it's more that they're overwhelmed, that the information was in multiple sources. The other thing that we've also found as well was that 41% of time is spent on tasks that do not help productivity or fulfill those employees intrinsically. And really the lack of kind of organization and updated information in these systems explains why employees feel that 41% of their time is spent on tasks that don't contribute to their performance indicators or fulfill them intrinsically. And we find this a lot with a lot of our clients that we work with before they come to us, that they have content, it's all in different silos, and it's very difficult not only to find that content, but to also target that content in a very simple way. The other thing we're also finding is from an executive concern. So 65% executives, they know that employees are overwhelmed, but also 44% of these executives really have no idea how to solve this issue or what they can do about it. So I think today in this presentation, we're excited, to share how a new technology can help fill this gap. What we really think is that combination of great employee and people data gathered from Hyperfish, along with some of the capabilities that we have within Bonzai, not only to find and present content, but to target content to users, can really help organizations address a lot of these gaps and a lot of these costs. And these are actual costs. I mean, it's not something, everyone knows when starting at a particular organization or even working there, how difficult it can be to find content that they need. And there's been a lot of studies that have highlighted this. So one of the famous studies is by IDC, which is often quoted. But there's a range of other research that we've looked at as well. So from the Working Council of CIOs, AIM, Ford Motor Company, Reuters, what they're finding is really 15 to 30% of knowledge worker time is spent searching for information specific to their jobs. 40% of people really say they can actually find what they need to in any system in order to help them become more productive. So there's a whole range of costs to do with that. And I know that from our experience, when we go into organizations and we talk about digital workplace projects, or we talk about intranet projects, a big part of what we do is around information architecture and taxonomy work. So how do we help organizations organize this content in a way that's going to make sense to their particular user group? Now, the other thing that we do as well is once we have this once we have this information organized, is that now we can use information not only about that, not only about the content that we have stored within our systems, but we can also match that content to information that we know about individuals. And we can do that in various ways. So one of them is around this concept of content targeting, which I'll talk about, which gives you the ability to create, let's say, a news story or a link or a form, a policy, a procedure, and target that piece of information to someone in your organization that you know, something about them. So imagine the concept of being able to target, let's say, policies per job role, or maybe you want to target policies on a more location or regional base. Maybe you want to target, if you're a bank, you want to target specific product announcements to users that have speciality within that product. All of that is now possible, except you need to have obviously great information and content, but also you need to have that data that's populated as part of your employee profile. Which brings us into question poll number 2. So number 2 question is, what data is populated on your employee profile? And let me launch this as well. So once again, a lot of organizations have that keystone data, but what we're finding here also is a lot of organizations are really looking for additional things that they want to be able to find users by. So maybe it's not just the manager that I report to or my people in contact information. Maybe they're looking for other attributes, like I said, skills, interests, expertise, maybe not just my physical location or physical region, but it may be a sub-office in here also. So we'll just wait for about 10 more seconds here for people to finish off with the voting. Perfect. So let me close this one here as well, and let me share this out with all of our friends here on here. So this is an interesting one. So once again, a lot of people seem to have that kind of keystone data in there, so the position and department that they work in. Less people have them picture and contact information there. We're finding, particularly with a lot of our clients, that ability not only to have a person's contact information there in terms of maybe it's phone number, maybe it's mobile phone, maybe it's a work phone, but having that picture in there is super, super important. Only 59% of people have the manager that they report to, but what's really interesting, only 23% of people have their skills or experience populated. And the reason that I find this fascinating is when we go out and we do user experience work with our customers, a lot of the times people come to us and say, I want to be able to find someone with a particular skill or particular experience or expertise within a topic that I'm interested in. So once again, this is this kind of gap that we're seeing. And obviously the last one is 18% projects and documents that I contribute to. And once again, this is something that, for organizations, that ability to not to reuse work. So for instance, we have a lot of clients that they have, a project area where not only can organizations see the current projects that they have ongoing, but maybe they can see artifacts or learn best practices from existing projects also. So let me hide that as well. So let me go through this. So the business impact of missing people data. These are stats taken from IDC again. So 86% of people don't have their mobile phones filled out, which seems interesting because as work changes into kind of more fluid after hours work, 80% of people don't have any photos, 64% of people don't have any managers also. And what happens is there's a bunch of costs associated with that. So typically 800 hours lost finding contact info within an organization, more than 2,000 hours spent physically finding people. And I'm sure everyone's done that, where you're looking for someone, you can't find them, so maybe you go and ask some colleague and they've met someone, or you run around the office and find that. So that's pretty common. Now the last question that we have is around how do you populate your employee profile data. So this is the last poll that we have. Now once again, I'll quickly launch this. So there's a couple of options here also. You either update it directly in Office 365, you maybe update a form that IT sends to you, maybe your human resources team does this for you. You have to submit a request, or even for some organizations there's no employee profiles there also. So we'll just wait about 10 or 20 seconds. We'll give everyone a chance here to fill in their answers. Few more seconds here. So interesting results. So let's close this poll and we'll keep going here as well. So let me just share these results. So this is interesting as well. So most people updated directly through Office 365. A lot of people have HR updating their profile information for them. Now, I would hazard as a guess that the reason that people do that is maybe they don't have a technology that allows them to do that, or alternatively what we're finding for a lot of our larger clients is you may have your people data stored in an existing system that you don't necessarily have access to, or there needs to be some level of approval before you actually go and update your information. Now what's really interesting is everyone has an employee profile, which is really great, but the question is, if everyone has an employee profile, why aren't we using their employee profile for more than just gathering this data? And we'll definitely touch upon and talk about that. So this is kind of the current state of how people data is being collected. So once again, people are updating through Office 365. Some people are doing custom things. People are doing imports, exports. One of the nice things as well is the guys from Hyperfish, and Jeremy is going to talk about all the ways that he can help you with that. And really, once again, there's a cost associated with this. So there really is a cost associated with missing people data. And like we're saying, what we're finding is, as we're starting to gather all of this rich intelligence about people and content, there's a lot of things that we can basically do there to not only leverage this data, but there's also a much easier way to be able to go and collect this data in a much easier and simpler way. So with that, what I'm going to do, I'm going to hand it over to Jeremy here. So Jeremy, I'm going to change you the presenter here. So let me just do that here. And what Jeremy's going to do is talk about some of the ways that their product Hyperfish is really going to help organizations, your organization, being able to gather that data. So Jeremy, I'll hand it over to you.
Great, thanks, Michael. So yeah, so Michael's talked a lot about kind of the business pain of the missing profile information, and we can see from some of your poll results of the ways that you're currently collecting that information inside of your own organizations. So what Hyperfish does is we essentially automate that way of collecting the information directly from the users. We see a lot of organizations that will try and do this as a team effort. The HR team will run around with a clipboard or a spreadsheet and go around and ask what people's office locations are and what their job titles are, and then they'll go and update those by bulk in a different way. The problem with those kind of exercises is that things change, and it's not really great to do that on like a quarterly basis, for instance. So what we do at Hyperfish is we enhance the employee engagement of your organizations by providing that profile data so that you can use that data to go find people within your organization, or use it to find documents that your peers have been creating, or maybe peers of peers and managers and so forth. We allow you to save time, so that rather than spending that time trying to find that person that you know is in marketing, but you can't remember their name and you know what they look like, and you know that the boss's name is Bob, we can have that data stored inside of Active Directory, and therefore when you go into Delve and you go marketing Bob, you'll be able to see the org chart within Delve that shows all those people, and you'll be able to identify them quicker. We can also do things like save time on finding people with particular skills by making sure that your skills information is updated correctly in your directory. What this means for you as an organization and as a user of Office 365 is we unlock the power that you've already invested in Office 365. More and more so now we find there's so many areas that require that information to be there in your directory. And so we find it really important to make sure that data is there for you to use. So what does Hyperfish do? Well, we analyze your directory, and you can go to hyperfish.com right now and try the free analyzer, which will produce a PDF report. Now, with that PDF report, you'll start to see what population of data there are that have mobile phone numbers, how many of your employees have a manager field set, and how many have got their department name or maybe their office location provided, and profile photo, for instance. Now, in the full product, not only do we analyze for whether the field is missing or not, complete, we also provide an idea of whether it's compliant or not. And what we mean by that is essentially you might have a rule for how you want your mobile phone and work phone numbers formatted so that it's very easy to click to dial in Skype for Business and it'll automatically dial in to your mobile phone and dial them into a meeting you're in. Or for instance that we know there's only 12 departments in your entire organization, so why make the users type that out? Why not make it so that we validate it against a drop-down of various different teams like marketing, finance, human resources. What that means is that if people have already got a value in their Active Directory for HR rather than human resources, that we'll actually validate them to kind of prompt them to go and get that updated. So it's not just about the field being populated, it's also about the compliance as well. Now, once we've kind of got an idea about who's got healthy profiles and who hasn't, we'll actually start reaching out and collecting from those users that information. And we do that by a variety of means. We can do that via email, we can do it via a Slack conversation with anyone that uses Slack within organizations, and we'll have Microsoft Teams support soon. And then also we have the ability with Skype for Business that we'll do a Skype for Business alert which will notify them that their profile information isn't up to date. If they click on that alert, they'll open up this profile form where they can go and update that data. Now, some of the things we're working on a bit further out on this is that we know that people have information stored in other systems. So for instance, it's very common for people to keep their email signature up to date because it's nice and easy to discover how to update that email signature inside of Outlook. And typically in an email signature it's kind of front and center in a lot of people's eyes because they're working in email a lot during their workday. And so we'll read the email signature and see things like the job title or the mobile phone number or the department they work in. And we'll actually reach out to that user and go, hey, we noticed that those fields, job title, mobile phone, and department, are actually in your email signature, but they're not in the directory. Would you like to update those? Or maybe that there's a value in the directory, and they might want to update their email signature because the Active Directory might be up to date. So that's just one example of how we're using suggestion technology. Another example would be that we're going to start prompting users for a LinkedIn user URL. And then we'll look into their LinkedIn profile and we'll get an idea about, for instance, what skills they have that have been endorsed by others. And I must admit, in the past, the endorsements have been pretty rough around the edges with LinkedIn. But just recently, I did notice that they've started to clean those up and make them much more relevant to the jobs that you have and the certifications that you have. And so things like cake making don't come up on my LinkedIn profile that used to 2-3 years ago. And this can often be useful in an organization to understand what skills people have. So if I wanted to go and find other people in the organization that have got project management skills or maybe solution architecture skills, I could go into Delve and search for that. Right now that isn't probably there. So again, we'll be making suggestions of past education, skills, past work experience, and updating those directly into SharePoint user profiles, which is what Delve uses to do that. Now, we run in the cloud. This service works with both Office 365, it works in a hybrid environment, but it also works with on-premises servers as well. Basically, for the on-premises and hybrid, we deploy an agent into your network, and we talk to that agent over an encrypted wire. And this allows us to basically do all the analysis no matter where your Active Directory is, whether it's in the on-premises or whether it's in Azure Active Directory online. When we started out with this product, we really thought about what technology that is kind of being introduced today could be used to kind of solve these problems that have been around for a long time. And one of the big things we saw was chatbots. So this ability to have a conversation with a user where they're probably spending a lot of their time either in Microsoft Teams or Slack or Skype for Business, and engaging with that user there and letting them have a conversation, not just on their laptop but also on their phone when they're on the go as well. We allow you to have a conversation via email as well. We know that there's a lot of different age groups in the organizations that may not be familiar or comfortable with using tools like Slack, but they are using email on a day-to-day basis, again on a mobile or on a computer on Outlook or even in the web browser in Outlook Web Access or even Gmail. And so when the email goes through to the user that says, hey, we wanted to update your data, we can actually have the user reply to that email and say, well, my office location is building 1, office number 1008, and we'll essentially, our hyperbot will validate that message and then go and store that into the system. And then one of the things that you're obviously reading a lot about in the technology world right now is artificial intelligence. We're using that for various different things, but the key thing we're using it for is when you upload a profile photo. We've got a lot of education customers that have students that have not had much time in industry, and they're used to posting photos on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, and often they'll post group photos. whereas you might, in your organization, decide that you only want the picture of them in the photo, profile photo of them. And so we do things like validate if there's more than one face in the photo. If there isn't a face in a photo, for instance, we've seen organizations where they have pictures of cats and dogs and cartoon characters uploaded as their profile photo, so we can validate those things. And so this is really where we're getting to with the artificial intelligence on that aspect, and also in the validation of images as well. Now, we see that these type of missing information or inaccurate information isn't just like a siloed project. If you're an IT manager on this call, or you're someone looking after productivity in your organization, I'm betting you've probably got one of these projects running right now. And each of these can help be made more successful by having complete profile information in your directory. And so it's worth looking and investigating how Hyperfish could help with not just things like internet projects and people search projects, but also things like if you're rolling out Skype for Business within your organization, having profile photos for everyone and job titles and departments makes it really useful when people are kind of IMing you to understand who they are and what context they are. And then when you're wandering around in the office and you'll actually recognize these people as they're walking down the hallways rather than not being familiar with them because they didn't have their profile photo there. We also see in larger organizations things like company mergers, M&A, mergers and acquisitions, where two organizations have different levels of completeness of their directories or different formats. And so by having Hyperfish deployed to both organizations prior to the merger, those directories can be cleaned up, and then when they're merged in Active Directory, there's a much more consistency across the employees that came from both organizations, which really helps with the success of those types of very heavily invested projects. Now, when we talk about unlocking the potential, I've already mentioned Skype for Business, and I've touched on Delve from this perspective of finding people's skills. But we also think that there's a lot of value there across things like Outlook when people are sending emails and having the contact cards where if you've had an email from someone and you want to be able to see a photo of them, you want to be able to see what their job title is and what department they're in, who their manager is, but also have the ability to maybe call them on their mobile phone and so forth. But we've also seen a lot of organizations that are using Office 365 or even Exchange Server for dynamic distribution lists is that they're using what's called dynamic membership in Active Directory groups, which allows you to do things like, I'm going to have an Active Directory group called marketing or finance or sales, and I want to dynamically add people to that group based on the department name being what it is in Active Directory. So I'm in the marketing department of Hyperfish, and in my attribute for my profile, I have the word marketing. And so I can set up a conditional rule for the marketing Active Directory group that essentially will say anyone that has marketing as their profile information is in this group. And so rather than kind of having to main all those different Active Directory security groups, which manage a lot of things such as Microsoft Teams and Office 365 groups now as well as kind of how you do SharePoint permissions across things like OneDrive and SharePoint, you can now kind of have those things automatically done based on profile attributes being updated inside of Hyperfish. So your Delve environment might start looking like this, and if you're lucky, in this case you'll see the organizational structure is shown, to something where Megan's profile now is looking at people that she's connected to based on her manager and based on her peers. It's got her About Me shown with her details. It has a really nice photo of Megan, kind of head and shoulders, so you get a good idea about what Megan looks like, as well as her job title and her office location. Now, it's going to show you, regardless in Delve, what documents you've been contributing to. But one of the things that people don't realize is with Delve is that you get to show documents of people around you. So Diego, in this case, is Megan's manager. And so you can see here that it's also showing documents that her manager's working on that she has access to, which is often useful to get an understanding about how you can contribute to work of others around you inside your organization. Now, it's already kind of put in skills here too. So Hyperfish can prompt for things like the skills inside the organization. So again, if we were doing that people search and looking for someone with corporate accounting experience, then that's what Megan would actually come up in that search. So there's a lot of power in having that profile information populated, so things like all of the products I listed can be unlocked and used at their full potential. Now, we mentioned about the LinkedIn graph here and this notion of having those skills pulled through, as well as this notion that maybe my job title is up to date in LinkedIn, but it isn't updated inside of my Active Directory, and having those suggestions. So that's one feature we're working on right now, which I believe will be a great power, and especially as we come up with other services too. And then we also talked a little bit there about the email signature for aspect with the machine learning, where you can see in my profile here that I've actually got my job title, I have my work phone number and my mobile phone number inside of my email signature. And so this really gives you the ability that we can make suggestions that these things need to be pushed back into Active Directory as well. So before I hand over to Michael, just one last call to action would be that you can go run this now. You only need read access to your directory. We don't store any personal information at all. And you'll be able to get a nice PDF report that shows you how healthy your Active Directory is within your organization. So with that, I'll hand back to Michael and we can go into the next section.
Awesome. Nice one, Jeremy. Thank you so much for that. So we've had actually quite a few questions here, but we'll just let me find one here that was the most interesting. So the first one is in what way is artificial intelligence or AI being leveraged within the Hyperfish product?
Yeah, so with the AI, the main one which we demonstrated was this notion of the looking into the photo to see the context of the photo. So whether there's more faces, whether there's too much skin in the photo. So for instance, with schools that use this product, we find that because they feel like students can post photos of them in a bikini for Facebook, that might be something they should be doing with their work profile photo. And so we can prevent that from happening just directly in the upload experience of inside of the program. Now, the artificial intelligence is also learning, for instance, that if I reach out to you via email and I don't get a response and they don't update their profile, but if I reach out to them via Slack or if I reach out to them via Skype for Business and I'm getting engagement, that the Hyperbot will learn and will actually reach out via that communication channel for that person in the future that way. And so there's a lot we're doing to learn like the most effective ways to communicate with each individual within the organization through that machine learning.
Awesome, great answer. No, that's great, and I think AI is definitely something that it's obviously a bit of a hot topic at the moment, one might say, but definitely we're seeing that that being leveraged. So great. So thanks so much, Jeremy, for that. So now the next question is, now that if you have this data, you have all of this data around people, so you've used Hyperfish to maybe get photos and skills or interest locations. What can you do with this data apart from maybe just searching for people, and how could you make that process easier? So with working with a lot of our different clients, we've really found 3 particular use cases and 2 that I'll go through, but really this relies on a core of making sure that your organization's people data is really, really solid. Now the first one is one that's what we're finding is probably resonating the most with our customers, and that's really the ability to target content to users based on something that you know about them. So this is a really interesting thing. So let's say that we know where a person works in terms of their location, or we know their skills, or we know their interests, or we know their expertise. How can we use that data to target content to them? Now that data may be news, it may be events, it may be policies, procedures, it may be any type of content. And what we say within Bonzai is we want to make sure that we target the right content to the right people at the right time. And once we've gathered this data and we have all of that data about people, for instance, maybe where I work or what my skills or interests are, we have a few capabilities within our Bonzai Intranet product which go above and beyond of what Microsoft can do. So let me kind of show you a bit of a demo of how this works. So this is Bonzai. So this is our intranet product, as you can see here. And what I've got here is I've got a landing page. So let's assume that I've gathered all of my data and I am working at my organization here. And once again, our product, very different user experience, very different look and feel to kind of typical SharePoint out of the box. And the reason that we wanted to do that is we want this to be the first place where an employee starts their day. So whether it's something like news, events, applications targeted to them, announcements, forms, all of this type of content. Now what we've seen traditionally in intranets is, organizations would come to us and say, we need an intranet and maybe their intranet was extremely successful, but the problem was that if their intranet was too successful, people were still overloaded with information. So they would come and they would land on their intranet homepage, and there would be so much news and so much information here that maybe it wasn't really relevant to them. So one of the features that we've introduced in the previous version of Bonzai is this concept of targeted content, which means that we can create content that can be targeted to someone based on something that we know about them. So let's assume that we have great information about our users here. So we know maybe their skills, maybe we know their interests, but typically we'll also know their region, so their physical location of where they work. So when I land on my homepage here, I can see that I have content targeted to me. Now at the moment, I actually have content targeted to me for Vancouver. I have an outage here. If I look at my news here, what I can see is I actually have content targeted to the Vancouver region. But not only that, other things are targeted to me as well. So I can see my events are targeted to my particular location. I also have applications which are targeted to me. And what we have is that ability in Bonzai really to target any piece of information that we know about an individual. So let's assume now that I can go back in here, and this is the way that we allow users to change their user profile properties through Bonzai. So you can use Hyperfish to gather that data initially, but I can also use Bonzai to go and change this. So let's say now that as an employee, I'm actually moving region. I'm not working in the Vancouver region anymore. I'm working in the New York region. Now if I click on Save Changes, what you're going to see is this page updates. Now we actually don't do a page refresh. Everything we do in Bonzai is client-side React, but you can see that that message that was there, that's gone, because that was only targeted to Vancouver. You can see now that what we have here is news that's targeted to me. We have events which are targeted to me. So here's an event for all locations. Here's an event for New York. But in addition to that, we can get smarter. So maybe we know that there's links which are just specific to people from a particular area. So one of the things that you might have not have noticed before is before I had a link to the Toronto Stock Exchange because I was part of Vancouver, but now because I'm part of the US region or part of New York, I've got a link to the New York Stock Exchange. Now what we call this in Bonzai is we call this a contextual homepage, because what I can do is create any piece of content, whether it's news, a link, an application, anything really that I have, and target that to people. So that combination of having great data in terms of understanding maybe my department or my job role or my skills or interests, along with our intranet tool, we're finding that a lot of organizations, particularly organizations which are quite large, and they need to be able to target content to them because they can't just have an intranet homepage where everyone sees the same thing. But that ability to target that content is extremely powerful and very easy from an end user perspective. So if I say, well, actually, you know, I'm doing work between New York and Sydney, now I can just click on Save Changes as well, and once again, we'll update all of this content for you. So it's a very targeted experience. But it doesn't have to be just on the homepage. It can be anywhere. So a really common example that we find is maybe you have an area called working here at an organization, and this area has a bunch of the typical kind of working here things, so things like benefits, learning and development, and HR. And we know that in some regions, things are going to be different. So for instance, we know that the New York dress code and the holiday dates and the policies may be different from, let's say, what's in Canada, where it's Vancouver. But once again, with our targeting feature and the fact that we know exactly where people are and how that content is linked, if a user now moves from these regions and now selects that they only see one content from Vancouver, if I click on Save Changes, you'll notice that straight away will change this important information here. So what this means is we're leveraging that people data that we have, but also we're using our Bonzai Intranet product to make sure we get the right information to the right users at the right time. Now this only works obviously if the content that you're creating is tagged correctly, but also it only works if you have that correct data around people and around individuals within an organization. And this is once again is one of the reasons that we really love the Hyperfish product, because once you have that data in there, you can do all sorts of really interesting things. And the first one, like we said, is around targeting content to people. Now the next use case that we have is around finding people. Now this is probably one of the biggest things that we have from our user base. Everyone comes to us and says, you know, when I'm looking for a piece of content, I'm typically not just looking for the piece of content, but maybe I'm looking for the person that created that content. Maybe I'm looking for someone who is an expert in that particular piece of content also. Now, Personally, I think that the kind of employee directory experience, both in Office 365 and in SharePoint, isn't necessarily very good. I mean, I don't think it's intuitive. So what we did with Bonzai is we essentially built our own. But what we're really doing in the back end is we're just leveraging data with people. We're leveraging not only, let's say, that keystone data in terms of phone, the department, and locations, but also we allow you to gather custom attributes also. So for instance, let's say that I want to capture languages spoken or skills or skills and languages or product expertise. As long as you can capture that data within your SharePoint environment, we're actually going to be able to show that through Bonzai in a really intuitive way. So I'll show you how that works. So if we go back to our intranet here, we have an area for directories, this is fairly common. Now we've got a bunch of different directories that ship with Bonzai, but what we're going to talk about is the employee directory here. So when I land on here, once again, very different look and feel, obviously, very different user aesthetic here. But this is how the employee directory looks on our Bonzai Intranet product if you weren't going to do anything with it at all. So if you have that data in Active Directory, you've synced it up to your user profile service, slap on Bonzai, and this is how it looks. So the first thing you can see is I can see all of the people within my organization. So I can see everyone who works here. I can do simple things. Maybe I want to filter for people. So this is everyone who starts with I or everyone who starts with M. A really common thing that we've heard from our users is like, well, when I'm looking for someone, I don't want to have to find them and then click and go to their profile just to see their data. I want to have that ability to find the information that I need about them pretty quickly. So I can do that. Let's say that Amanda is the person that I'm looking for. All I need to do is click on this and I have all of the contact details ready to rock and roll. I also have full integration with Skype for Business, as Jeremy was talking about also. Now the other thing that we do as well in terms of finding people is maybe we want to look for people. So this is something that Microsoft has started to do. We've had this in the product for quite a while. But once again, that ability to find people. So maybe I want to find Amanda by first name here. Maybe you want to find Amanda by last name. Or even Jeremy was talking about some of the AI things. So some of the things that we do, especially with phone numbers here, is really common use case. You come back to your desk and you have a missed call and you don't know who that person is. All I need to do is start plugging in that phone number here. We'll give you type ahead search suggestions. But you'll notice that we have some logic in there as well, that even though the phone number has got a space, we know that we're kind of smart enough to know that you're probably looking for a phone number, so we're gonna find that person for you. Now, this is great if you kind of know who you're looking for. So if you know the name of the person, super easy. But a lot of the times, people are trying to find an individual, but they don't actually know their name. They want to find them by maybe department or by role or by languages spoken or something like that. So once again, what we do within Bonzai is we give you the ability to essentially search for people, but we have a very kind of powerful mechanism the way that we do that. So this is all fully configurable. It takes about 2 seconds to add additional search boxes. But typically, people want to search for people maybe by location or by department or by role. And this language is spoken one. This is one that we're seeing a lot of customers ask for. Like, I want to find a person that speaks a particular language. So let's say, for example, that I'm looking for people in a department, and I went out, let's say I went out to an executive retreat, and I met a person, and I don't remember who they were, but now I need their help because I need to find someone that actually speaks Spanish within my organization. So I can go into my Bonzai search box here, and all I need to do is start typing. And Jeremy talked about this before as well, is in terms of what we do is we kind of validate that data. So as soon as I start typing in a term, we'll go out, look at all of the departments that people are part of, and we give you these search suggestions. So I can say, I want to see everyone from accounting, because I'm not sure if this person worked in accounting, or maybe it was operations, or maybe it was human resources as well. Now what we're doing here is we're doing a very complex search very easily, because I'm saying show me everyone who works in accounting or operations or human resources. Now once again, you can kind of do this with out-of-the-box SharePoint search, but you need to know the SharePoint search syntax, which is really complex, really crazy. So we try to make that as simple as possible. But what I've got here now is everyone who works in accounting or operations or human resources. So there's about 60 of those people here, but what I want to do is I want to find someone in that area that speaks Spanish. Now what I've done here is actually a very complex search. We've made it look very easily, but I've found everyone who works in either one of these 3 departments and speaks Spanish very quickly and very easily. Now the idea with this though, and what we try to do with Bonzai, is all about flexibility. So you don't have to have department, role, or languages spoken. You can have anything here. So languages is a very common one. Product expertise is a very common one. If I work in a financial institution, for instance, maybe it's I'm from a particular product. If I work in a research-based institution, for example, maybe there's a particular topic of research that I'm actually really well versed in. But what we've tried to do with our product, with Bonzai and with Hyperfish on the back end, is if you can get Hyperfish to gather all of that data, look how simply and beautifully you can present this to people. And once again, you can add whatever attributes you need. You can use the Hyperfish product to gather all of that data, and then you can show that very simply and very easily for users using our what we call our employee directory feature here. And this is new, this ability to do what we call compound searches, because as you know, especially in large organizations, you want to be able to say, show me all of the people that work within this department, that have this role, that can speak this language, that maybe have got a product speciality of this. If you've got 30 or 50,000 people in your organization, you know, you still might get 5 or 10 results back, but we give you that ability to do very basic searching, but also very kind of complex searching in a really beautiful user experience way. So that's the second thing we're finding. So the first one is using that profile data to target content to people. Very, very important now, especially because, you know, I love Delve, and I'm sure Jeremy does also, but, you know, the whole AI thing, it's not the silver bullet. You know, we don't have it there yet. Delve's not there yet where I can sit down and it's going to show me the exact piece of information that I want. So there's still some manual work that needs to be done there. And particularly if you're a communications person, or even if you're, you know, part of an IT team or a particular department, that ability to just create a piece of information, and to target it just to a group of users is super, super powerful. The second scenario, obviously, is what I've just demonstrated, how to let users tap into all of that rich information that you found in a really beautiful, simple way. And that's what we've tried to do with our employee directory. You set up whatever attributes you want, you allow people to search for them, and they can find that really, really easily. And then the last thing is really around, you know, connecting and collaborating with the right people. So what we've found, which is really interesting for a lot of our clients, is they want to have a listing of people. So let's say, for instance, you have a department area on your intranet, which is fairly common, or maybe a leadership team. You know, that ability to have a list of leaders within your organization so you can locate people, you know, across time zones or departments or the groups they work with very, very easily. So once again, this is another feature that we have within Bonzai. And now this is more of a web part that we've developed. Now the reason that we've done this really is, you know, we had a number of organizations come to us and say, well, you know, it'd be great maybe if I could set up, let's say, an accounting page, but I can show all of the leadership here also. So we've developed this within Bonzai. Now what this actually does, it's actually very simple. A lot of our pieces are very, very simple, just kind of thought about it in a really logical way. But I can have a department page, for instance, here, and I can actually show not only people within here, but I can pull information out. And the nice thing that we do with Bonzai is we're actually pulling this information out from the user profile service. So once again, I can have a list of people. Maybe I want to have a list of people from an accounting team. We've got a lot of customers that have a list of people for a particular product. But what's really nice is I can go and I can find those people. The other thing is the people picture piece. Now I know Jeremy mentioned this in terms of Hyperfish has some really great AI in terms of, you know, when I upload a photo, for instance, I can actually validate that. So this is what my profile looks like. Now, our culture of our organization is I guess, fairly unique. So I'm not sure, Jeremy, if my vampire photo would actually get through this, but this is the photo that we have, and it really is in line with our culture. This is me from Halloween, being a vampire, by the way.
That's cool. I love the animated whale at the top of the screen too.
Yeah, we like I said, it's a unique culture. But one of the things that we mentioned is that Jeremy mentioned, you know, I have that profile picture, I have all of this information about Delve. But for me, pictures are really important because pictures really make, I think, the connection with technology much more real. So within Bonzai, you know, with Office 365, you can have your pictures, and Jeremy talked about having it in Skype and emails and so forth. One of the things we also try to do with Bonzai also is kind of have pictures, you know, kind of everywhere. So for instance, if I'm, let's say that I'm looking at a particular news article, typically when someone's created a news article here, I can have contacts listed here also. So here's my news article. I might have a list of contacts associated with this. And once again, if I have that right data, I can contact that person really quickly and really easily. And as we said, this really allows you to kind of connect and collaborate with people. So for news, it's kind of not as relevant as, let's say I'm looking at this piece of information. So let's say I'm looking at a page that shows me my health and welfare benefits for employees. I have all of this information here, but if I have a question, I can easily go and talk to and find this particular person here also. And just by having pictures, what we find for a lot of our clients, and this is actually some quantitative research that we've done, the more profile pictures people have on their intranet, the more faces that they see, the more connected they feel as part of the organization. That employee engagement is greater. So that's all I have time for. So like I said, 3 different pieces. So it's that ability to target content, it's that ability to search for people also, and the final thing also that we have is that ability to connect and collaborate with the right people also. So Sean, I think we've got a couple of questions here. So give me one sec here. We've gone through a bit of a demo here as well. Right, so question, this is more of a thing, so how customized are your templates? I guess this is for us. How do you know there won't be an issue with the level of CSS your team used? Yeah, so that's a really good question. So we work very closely with Microsoft as an ISV partner. We also follow all of the SharePoint best practices also. So everything that we have written in Bonzai is actually client-side React web parts with our own CSS. So what we do is we make sure that if there's any changes, we're also there ahead of time. So the last question from Kevin, can you show the department tab? Yeah, Kevin, I can show you the department tab. Now, once again, this is just an example demo tenant, but what we have here, when I land on the department site, I get a list of the departments that exist within my organization, and then each one of these departments looks slightly differently. So for instance, the accounting department, I think we went to, they've got their own events, they've got some links, they've got their leadership teams, forms, training and development. But if I go to, let's say, human resources, once again, human resources is a little bit different. They've got questions, they've got YAML within here as well. But once again, we can do a whole range of different pieces here within Bonzai. So we're almost out of time, but I think as a bit of a recap here, so the reason that we've partnered with Hyperfish is that we know that great people data can be used in a number of different scenarios, and we've found that a lot of organizations that we work with really have issues in terms of getting the right data from people. Now, as Jeremy said, typically that used to be a massive approach where your HR team would go and gather that data. But imagine the power of using Hyperfish to gather that people data in a very quick and very easy way, and then using something like our Bonzai Intranet product to now leverage that people data for targeted communications, for findability across individuals, and also that ability to connect and collaborate really quickly and really easily. So Jeremy, thank you so much for your time. Everyone,
you're welcome. I appreciate the opportunity.
No problem. So everyone, thank you so much for your time as well. I hope this has been useful. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. Once again, we are a partner with Hyperfish. We absolutely love the technology. We think that their product is absolutely awesome. We obviously like what we do as well. So if you have any questions, please reach out to us. There will be an email going out at the conclusion of this. If you're interested in the demo about Hyperfish, if you're interested in the demo of Bonzai, please feel free to reach out. But for now, thank you so much, and there'll be many more webinars to come. So I hope everyone has a great day. And thanks again, Jeremy.
Muted.